How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we'll make a giant cinnamon bun. Because what can be better than a regular cinnamon bun, right? And trust me, it's well worth giving it a go. I know it's kind of ridiculous, but look at it. Beautiful layers, a delicious topping. What more could you want? And it's not just some giant bland version of something. It is actually like a cinnamon bun. You know, super soft, nice layers. And check this out, this is my favorite way of eating something like this. Just peel the layers off one by one. If this doesn't get your sweet tooth going, I don't know what will. Now let's get on with it. And as always, you'll find a full written recipe with metric and imperial units down in the link in the description box. I keep all my recipes on my website, so they're all in one place. Now to make this bun, you'll need a tray with some non-stick paper, a cake ring, also lined with some paper, and as always, a bowl, scales, dough scraper, temperature probe, and you also need a brush and a rolling pin. Now onto the ingredients. For the dough, you'll need some strong white bread flour, milk, yeast, sugar, butter, and some salt. For the filling, we'll need some soft butter, sugar, cinnamon, and for the topping, some icing sugar, cream cheese, butter, vanilla, and a bit of water. Now before we start, I want my milk to be around 17 degrees Celsius. We're making this dough with a pre-ferment called a flying sponge. The purpose of it is to add a lighter texture and a bit more flavor. And it's super simple to make. All we need to do is mix all of the milk with all of the yeast and a portion of the total flour. Now unlike other pre-ferments, which are fermented for a long period of time, overnight, for 24 hours, they use very small amounts of yeast. We used all of the yeast in this one. So because of that, it'll only take around an hour. So once you mix your ingredients well, cover them up and let them rise, and you can see it puffing up beautifully. It's nice and light and full of air. Now we can continue on adding the rest of the ingredients. Add your salt and your sugar and give it all a good mix. You want to dissolve the salt and sugar crystals now. Give it a good mix, and when you're happy, add the rest of the flour. Now grab your scraper and mix this to a dough. And if the scraper's not doing the job, continue on by hand. It's always best to mix the dough in the bowl until there's no more dry flour, to avoid making a mess on your table. Now we can start kneading it. I'm using a regular kneading method because this dough is not too sticky. I press down and forwards with the heel of my right hand, then using the fingers of my left hand I fold the piece of dough under the heel of my right hand, then turn and repeat. Once you've done this a few times, the motion will become fluent. You want to keep doing this for around 3 minutes to get some gluten going. Now stretch the dough out and add the last ingredient, the soft butter. Now there's no pretty way of doing this, just mash the butter into the dough. The reason why we're adding the butter now instead of adding it in the beginning is to get some gluten development before we do so. Now you want to mash the butter up for around 30 seconds and then continue kneading. And trust me, this sticky mess will turn into a beautiful dough. Now you can use your scraper to bring it together once in a while. Now you can use the dough to pick off the butter off your hands. It goes without saying that your hands should be clean, right? Now after you've added the butter, you want to continue kneading the dough for 4 minutes. And once everything's come together, the dough is nice and smooth and not too sticky, we can pop it into the bowl, take its temperature and start fermenting. Around 26 degrees Celsius is just about right for this. Now cover it up and leave it for 45 to 60 minutes, depending on your dough temperature. After the first proof, you want to give it a fold. Performing a fold is super simple. Place your dough out on the table, smooth side down, flatten it out, then fold the top third down and the bottom third up. And then do the same with the sides, fold them in thirds. Folding will make sure that there's extra layers in the dough structure, making it stronger. It will also equalize the temperature in the dough, giving us an even fermentation. And of course it will degas the dough because it acts like punching down. Now back in the bowl it goes for another 45 to 60 minutes. And you can really see it rising up now. If yours isn't, leave it for longer. Or if it's rising rapidly, cut the fermentation time down. My one looked about right, so I'm gonna make the filling. Combine the butter, sugar and the cinnamon. And we might as well make the topping now too. Simply combine all the ingredients except the water. The splash of water is only there to adjust the consistency if needed. And that will depend on the cream cheese that you're using. I use Philadelphia, perhaps it doesn't contain as much water as other cream cheese, so I needed to add a little bit. You want it to be like a thick sour cream consistency. Now let's get on with making our bun. Grab your flour and a rolling pin What I like to always do before rolling is flattening the dough out by hand. This helps us get it into a general shape. Now continue on with the rolling pin. Now roll it gradually, don't go crazy. If the dough is not stretching, then just leave it to sit for 5 minutes and relax. And dust it with flour once in a while so it doesn't stick. But of course don't use too much flour, it's easier to add than to take off. So once you rolled it to a massive rectangle, start spreading on the filling. Now as you can see, this filling here is not too wet and is basically just enough to cover the whole surface. If you want your filling to be more spreadable, then you can add 30 grams or an ounce of butter. As you can see, this worked just fine. Now make sure everything's nice and straight, more or less anyway. Now grab your dough scraper and slice this dough into 4 long strips horizontally. This is the trick to rolling the massive bun up. You could also slice it into 5 strips, then your bun would not be as high but would be wider. But regardless, this is the next step. All you want to do is take one of the strips and roll it up. Don't roll it too tight, just let it roll naturally, don't squeeze it or anything. Now take your rolled up piece of dough, place it on the second strip and roll them together. And then repeat with the rest of the strips. And that's your giant bun, simple as that. Now you can tuck the end piece underneath, press it against the table so it's nice and flat, then place it in your cake tin. You could of course make it without the cake ring, but then I think it wouldn't hold its shape as well. As you would have noticed, I'm not using the bottom of the cake ring, it gives me less washing up to do. Now let's clean down the mess and get ready for the final proof. And at this point I realized a smaller ring will be better. I wrote down the size that I used in the recipe. Now cover up your bun so it doesn't dry out and leave it to ferment. It will take around 1 to 1.5 hours. During this time you want to preheat the oven 160 degrees Celsius with a fan on. You want this to double in size before baking, and if yours hasn't, then leave it for longer. Or if it's puffing up rapidly, of course cut the fermentation time down, as always. Now this will take a while, almost an hour and a half to bake. And if it's getting dark quickly, you can cover it with some tin foil. And before your bun is finished baking, make a little sugar syrup, which is equal parts sugar and water brought up to the boil. That's it. Now get your bun out of the oven and brush it all over with the sugar syrup. And if you are not sure if your bun is ready or not, you can measure the temperature of it. If the inside reads more than 94 degrees Celsius or 200 Fahrenheit, then it's ready. Now once you let it rest in the tin for around 10 minutes, you can remove it. This is where the baking paper comes in handy, so it didn't stick to the tin. It's looking pretty good, right? The freakishly large cinnamon bun, I love it. Now before we top it with the cream cheese icing, you want to let it cool down completely, otherwise the icing is just going to run off and melt. And the topping is really my favorite part, I think that's what makes any cinnamon bun. But there you have it, a giant cinnamon roll or cinnamon bun, call it what you want. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have any questions also let me know. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, we've got loads of delicious bread recipes coming up. Thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one.